Hey there folks, welcome to the channel. We're doing a little grinding today and I thought, you know what? Today is a great day for a sausage making experiment. What's the best way to push that excess meat that remains behind in your auger after you're done grinding? We're going to be looking at 3 of the most popular methods today, and at the end of this video I'm going to share with you which one of them is my favorite and which one you should stay away from. Let's get started.
All right, here we go. One of the methods that we're going to be exploring is the use of bread. Any bread will work. This is just regular sandwich bread. We're also going to be looking at ice. Nothing special about this ice. Came out of the freezer. We're going to be tossing that into the grinder. And then the third method is going to be meat. So we're going to use meat to push meat through the grinder. This is groundbreaking stuff here, folks. All right, let's go ahead and grind up some meat so we can get this project underway. And the issue is that when you're grinding meat, there's always going to be just a little bit left in that auger, right? And so let's go ahead and remove the knife and pull that auger out. And this is what I'm talking about right here. So the smaller the grinder, the smaller the amount of meat is. So if you're using a number 22 or number 32, you're going to have more of that unground meat remaining. And so let's go ahead and push that back in there, close it back up, and look at ice as a method of pushing that meat through so that we can get it 100% ground. The issue when it comes to ice is that you cannot put whole ice pieces into your grinder. It's going to damage your grinder. And so we need to make sure that it's crushed up, and we want it into almost like a flake. So if you're going to be using ice from your freezer, you do want to smash it up. And this is roughly what it should look like. You don't really want any big pieces. That's absolutely perfect. So we're going to take that and we're going to go ahead and stick it into our grinder. And we're going to stick just a little bit at a time. You don't want to put too much. Adding too much is also going to be problematic for your grinder. And so we're just going to slide a bit in. Let's go ahead and turn the grinder back on. And the amount of ice that you add, you know, it's kind of relative to the size of grinder you're using. I'm only going to be adding maybe a couple teaspoons. And that should be sufficient to slowly start to push. There we go. That meat out. Very good. We're going to add a little bit more. And we're going to push it until we start to see ice come out of that plate. And there we go. So let's go ahead and open it up, take a look at how ice did. And look at that. We've got an ice wall that's right at the tip of the auger. And it looks like all the meat's been pushed out. Now, I'm going to save my opinions on each method till the end of this video, so you're going to want to stick around for all that. But there we go. So it looks like ice did a good job at pushing out the meat. Let's go ahead and look at the next method as we grind a little more meat to get that auger packed again. So here we go. And this particular method, very popular, is bread. Like I said earlier, this is just regular sandwich bread. You can use any kind of bread you want. It really doesn't matter all too much. And let's see how good it is at removing that excess meat through the auger. So I'm going to go ahead and rip this in half. We're putting this into a number 12 grinder. So the bigger the grinder, you know, the more bread or ice or whatever it is that you're going to have to add. And I'm going to put enough bread until I start to see it come out of that plate. And that's going to kind of let me know that all that meat's been pushed out. So let's go ahead and add the other half and see if that's enough bread. And look at that. We're starting to see bread come through the plate. And it looks like we are good to go. So this used 1 slice of bread. Let's go ahead and open it up and see how we did. Plate looks nice and clean. Let's go ahead and remove the auger. And it looks like only bread at the end of that auger. There's no unground meat left behind. So bread did a good job as well at pushing excess meat through the auger. Let's go ahead and look at the final method, which is using meat to push meat through the grinder. So we're going to go ahead and grind a little bit more. Notice our meat is coming out nice and pebbly. It should be cold, under 34 degrees when you're grinding your meat. And what we're going to do for this method is just grab a small handful and feed it back into the grinder. You can make a little log like I'm doing here, or you can do little meatball size pieces. It really doesn't matter. I've done it both ways, and both ways have been effective. And for this size grinder, I'm just going to add basically 2 handfuls of meat. So we're going to do it one more time. And that's just to ensure that it pushes everything out. If you're going to use a number 22 or a number 32 grinder, you might want to add just a little more meat, ensuring that it pushes everything through. So let's go ahead and see how we did with this method. All right, let's remove the auger. And this is what's remaining. Looks like all the unground meat got pushed through, and all that's remaining is ground meat. So this method was also a success.
And there it is. All 3 of those options did a pretty good job at pushing meat through the auger. So let's talk about the pros and cons of each one, starting with bread. Bread's a great choice. It's naturally soft, it goes in easy, and it's effective at pushing that excess meat through the auger. If you use bread, you're going to run 0 risk of damaging your grinder, so it's a very low stakes method of getting that extra meat out of the way. And if you don't mind a little bit of bread inside your sausage meat, this is actually a great choice. Truth be told, it's one I rarely use because I don't always have bread laying around, which brings me to method number 2, already ground meat. For me, this is a brilliant way of doing it, and it's the method that I recommend to anyone who's asking, primarily because it's so easy. A couple of handfuls of already ground meat fed back into your grinder pushes any excess meat through that auger and you are done. You also don't have to worry about damaging your grinder in any way, so also a low stakes method. And if you don't mind a very small percentage of your meat being ground twice, so it's going to have a slightly finer texture, this way is absolutely perfect. And that brings us to the third and final method, which is ice. Now, I did save ice for last, primarily because it's the most complicated method, but also because it has the most warning signs. I had an opportunity to reach out to several grinder manufacturers, and interestingly enough, 100% of them actually discouraged the use of ice to push any excess meat through the auger, and the reason that they gave was because of how taxing it is for your grinder. They said it could easily seize up your grinder and burn out your motor. Some of these companies actually even went so far as to say that if you are feeding ice into your grinder and it damages your grinder, it could totally void your warranty, which I'm not entirely sure how they would know that unless you're filming yourself doing it and putting it on YouTube. Okay, let's talk about ice. If you're going to use this method, which I highly discourage, but if you're going to use this method, the first thing you need to be aware of is that your ice needs to be broken up into relatively small pieces. You don't want big chunks of ice going into your grinder. The other thing you want to be aware of if you're going to use ice is that you can only put a little bit of ice in at a time. I'm talking maybe a half a tablespoon, a little bit more than a half a tablespoon. You don't want that ice to build up inside your auger, which inevitably could cause your auger to seize and then burn your motor up. And I'm going to give you a great example because during this particular experiment, I actually put a little bit too much ice inside my grinder, and let me show you exactly what that sounds like. That motor was definitely having a hard time with that ice, and as that ice created that frozen block at the end of the auger, it eventually seized up the motor because that auger could no longer turn, and I had to shut it down. Now, the result of that was a very pungent burnt motor smell, and I can guarantee you that if I do that a couple more times with this grinder, I'll end up having to replace my grinder. And the same goes for bigger grinders. If you end up putting too much ice into your grinder, you could create an ice block at the end of the auger, which will keep your auger from spinning, causing the motor to seize up and then eventually burn, and you definitely don't want to do that. The other thing that I noticed when it comes to using ice is that if your ice isn't completely crushed, if you're adding chunks of ice into your grinder, it can cause little nicks and chips on the grinder blade itself. Now, that's going to create a very inefficient grind, but it's also going to dull your grinder blade really quick, which is the leading cause for fat smear when you're grinding meat. And there you go, folks. Those are 3 ways to push excess meat through your auger. My number 1 favorite pick is already ground meat. It's the easiest, it's the safest, and it does a great job. Coming in second is bread. Bread is a safe option. You don't have to worry about it. No damage can be done to your grinder if you don't mind a little bit of bread inside your meat and you have bread on hand. And then, of course, there's ice, which I do not recommend. It's the most problematic, and it's the one option that if you use continuously, you're more than likely going to end up having problems with your grinder. If you have any questions about this video, leave them in the comment section below. And if you have a clever way of pushing that excess meat through your auger, I'd love to hear about it in the comment section below. We've got a whole bunch of behind-the-scenes sausage making videos just like this to help you become a better sausage maker. So if you are new here and you like this type of content, take a moment and click that subscribe button and that notification bell. And if you got something out of this video, a great big thumbs up is always appreciated. Thanks a lot for being here. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.